What's going on, guys? It's been a little bit since we spoke. I think around 2 weeks. Reason being is last week I just wasn't really feeling it, so I took a mental health break from YouTube. But we are back and there's a lot to discuss. Specifically 3 sessions that I played recently at Hustler which have not been covered on the channel, and we're gonna fix that today. I'm out for a little night walk. Couldn't recommend walks enough, by the way. They're just so good for clearing the mind and they feel therapeutic. And you know what else is therapeutic? Venting about poker hands to you guys as this Cadillac ruins my video. But yeah, there's a lot of action coming up, 3 sessions that I haven't covered. So what we're gonna do today is get into the most important hands from all 3 of those sessions. You may laugh, you may cry, you may make some friends along the way. Who knows? Maybe you guys are nice to each other in the comments section. Stay tuned and find out. Let's get into some poker, and I'll check in with you guys right after. Alright guys, here we go once again at Hustler Casino, starting off with the first of 3 streams. In the first interesting hand for today's vlog, I look down at a premium. We're going to start off the day with pocket kings in the small blind. There's a few limpers. I'm obviously going to raise it up, so I make it $1,100. And then the calling train begins, all aboard as we go 4 ways to a flop of Queen 8-6 Rainbow. All things considered, not too bad for these pocket kings. We've still got an overpair, plenty of draws available, and unless someone hit a set or 2 pair, we should be in good shape. So I continue betting for $2,300. Brown Balla makes the call, and then Henry calls as well, before Audie jams all in with his middle pair of 8s for a total of $12,000. Back around to me, and because this is a capped game, I'm not sitting super deep here. I've only got around 20,000 remaining in my stack, so I am all in as well. Gets to Brown Balla, who goes in the tank for quite a while before eventually calling with his top pair of queens, no kicker. And now Henry, facing all this action, decides he wants to gamble with his open-ender, so just like that, we have a 4-way all-in with just a pair of kings. Obviously, it's a strong hand, but when you're up against 3 other guys, it's probably going to be tough to hold. Off to a run-out, we're going just once, since splitting it 4 ways is just way too complicated. Turn card is an ace, which isn't my favorite, but I think it's mainly a blank, given the action on the flop. And then the river is beautiful. It's the deuce of clubs, which should change absolutely nothing. And sure enough, we end up holding against top pair, middle pair, and of course Henry's straight draw. Not a bad start at all. Next, this hand goes down where I raise it up to $300 pre-flop with 8-7 offsuit, not exactly recommended. And we get 4 different callers, so 5 ways to a flop of 10-9-5 Rainbow. We do have an open-ended straight draw, but not really interested in betting a 10 high board against 4 other dudes. So I check, and then airball bets $1,000 when it gets to him. Henry then calls, and I also make the call. Could check raise once in a while, but I think a call is more standard, so off to a turn, which is the 9 of diamonds. Henry checks, I check again, and this time airball checks it back, giving me a free card, which comes perfect. It's the 6 of clubs, giving me the nut straight. Board is paired, but given how this one's played out, I think we're going to have the winning hand almost always. So when Henry now leads out for $3,000, I think we have a clear raise on our hands. Question is how much, and I decide on a size of $11,000. Airball gets out of the way, but when it gets back around to Henry, with his trip 9s, he keeps me honest and makes the call. That's good news for us. A straight is good, and we take this pot down as well. In this next hand, Brown Balla opens up the action to 300. Henry makes the call, and then I look down at 5-4 suited in the big blind. I think 9 out of 10 times just calling here is completely standard, but Once in a blue moon, throwing it in as a re-raise just for balance I think is completely fine. So that's what I do here, but looking back I don't really love it considering that brown balla isn't too deep. He's only got like 20k. And Henry called behind, which sometimes he might be doing with a trap. So yeah, not in love with this pre-flop play, but here we go. I make it 2 grand, brown balla calls, as does Henry. So 3 of us still to a flop of king 6-6, no hearts at all. A couple of clubs out there I completely miss. I decide to check, but it's worth noting I would also do this with some strong hands like aces, ace king, king queen, even pocket kings of course. So I'm not necessarily giving up on this hand just yet. I check, brown balla checks, Henry checks. Turn card is the 7 of diamonds, giving me an open ender, so things definitely get better. But I decide to check again and go for a check raise, much like I would if I had something really strong on the flop. Reason being is I think brown balla and Henry are both players who bet perhaps a little too often when checked to, and I like pouncing on that with strong hands, of course, so we can build a big pot with value, but I think balancing that out with bluffs like these also makes sense. So that's my thought process behind checking again. And sure enough, the situation develops as I thought it might. Brown balla bets 1500. Henry gets out of there, and now I go for the check raise. I make it 5500 to go. Don't want to go too big because I'm trying to set up an all-in on the river that hopefully will put him in a tough spot with a pocket pair or just a 7. Brown balla thinks for a bit and makes the call, and we see another king on the river. Well, it's kind of tough to bluff double paired boards, but by that same token, I would have check raised many different kinds of kings on the turn, so I think this is a fine spot to go for it. Don't expect it to get through every time, but often enough that I'm okay with this. I jam all in, and now brown balla thinks for quite a while before eventually calling, so that is bad news. We lose this one. $45,000 pot, headed the wrong direction. You could argue it wasn't necessary on my part to play 5 high this way, and I wouldn't blame you, but I think I'm pretty much okay with this play overall, aside from pre-flop. In this next one, I raise up the button to 400 bucks before Henry re-raises from the straddle to $2,100. Back to me on the button, and with cards like King 10 offsuit against a re-raise, even though it is Henry, I think it's just too loose to defend here. Granted, I am on the button, so he might be re-raising a bit wider, but even so, King 10 offsuit's not really my favorite type of hand to continue with. Deep stacked as well, just not great, but I decide to make the call, which I would almost never do with this exact hand, but I think in the moment I was just kind of feeling it for some reason. Anyway, we go to a flop and it comes down pretty lucky for me. As you guys can see, I was dominated pre-flop, but the board comes out King 8-6 with 2 hearts, so plenty of draws, and we have a weak king. I guess medium strength at best. Henry continues for 1300. No point in raising. Folding is out of the question, so that just leaves one option. I make the call, and we see the jack of spades on the turn. I kind of like this card because not only does it make, king jack less likely, which had us in trouble, but I think it's also a card that Henry will often continue to bluff on if he was bluffing the flop. And I think that's what's going on here as he now continues to apply pressure with a bet of $7,000, a pot-sized wager. Uncomfortable spot now with King 10 off, but considering that we still could have the best hand, and I know Henry might be bluffing, I make the call once again. Probably going to have to fold a fair amount of rivers depending on what he does, but we see the 7 of diamonds, and now Henry decides to check. I am more than okay with that. I check it back, expecting to win more often than not, but doubtful we're getting called by worse, so I just go to showdown, and just like that we win this pot as well. That was the last interesting hand from this first stream, so let's move right along to stream number 2. We're going to start this one off with pocket 9s in an already precarious situation because there's a late position straddle to 400 bucks, and I'm pretty much first to act in the small blind, not necessarily first, but early enough that it makes these 9s really tricky to play. My strategy in these kinds of spots, which I wouldn't recommend for you guys' games because, let's face it, most public mid to low stakes poker games don't have a ton of straddles going on. But anyway, my strategy here is to mostly limp all my good hands from the small blind and then either call or raise depending on what happens behind me. So that's what I do. I toss in the 400 bucks. Bulldog now raises to, a casual size of $17,000. Everyone else folds, it gets back around to me, and I've played enough with Bulldog to know that we're probably flipping or in good shape. I mean, if he's playing a higher overpair this way, more credit to him, but we're all in for 17 and change a piece, so 35,000 in the middle, off to a run out, which we're going to run just once, and there's an ace on the flop, so that's not good, and sure enough, we lose to ace queen. Nothing too complicated going on here, just, you know, standard flip for a good amount of money. Always better to win these, but this time we can't get it done, so we're stuck right off the bat in this second stream. But here comes the perfect remedy. It's pocket aces. In this one, the player on my right limps in for 200. His name is Jensen. Haven't played with him before. I'm next to act with aces, and you guys are going to see an absolute unicorn of a play from me here where I just overlimp with aces. Almost never have you guys see me do this, and that's for good reason. I think aces are just a very clear raise almost always, but I do periodically limp in with hands like 5-4 suited or pocket twos or whatever, and I like to protect those hands just a little bit by occasionally throwing in aces and kings, and of course coming in for either the slow play or a back raise depending on what happens. But the worst disaster strikes here as everyone else limps as well. As you can tell, I'm a little frustrated, having a little bit of fun with it, but man, it totally sucks when you try something fancy with aces and instead you go, what is this, 7 ways to a flop. However, it comes out pretty good, as it often does with aces, but this one is above average. It's king 7-5. I feel like there's not a lot of 2 pairs going on here, not a lot of sets, because kings and 7s would have raised pre, maybe even 5s would have raised pre, so I think it's actually a great flop to get some value on. Checks to me, and I just start with a green chip, $1,000 into the pot. Bulldog makes the call, as does Mike, Nia, and Jensen. So still 4 of us going to a turn, which definitely is not my favorite. It's the 3 of diamonds. 6-4 gets there, which is one of the more obvious draws on the flop. But aside from that, we should still have the best hand. And I'm just going to hope that no one's got 6-4, to be honest with you guys. Checks to me again, and this time I assemble a bet of $3,000. Mike Nia thinks for a while before folding, and then Jensen makes the call once more. So heads up to a river now, which is the 10 of spades. A beautiful run out for the most part. 8-6 doesn't get there. Clubs miss. Kings shouldn't really improve too often since king 10 might have raised pre-flop. Overall, I'm quite happy with this river card. Now it's just a question of how much value can we get versus a single pair, presumably a king. As you guys can see, I'm wrong, as Jensen has just called me down with a lone pair of 7s, but in the moment I don't know that, so I decide to bet $8,800, around 2/3 pot, which is how much I would bet with a bluff. Say I had a misdraw myself of sorts. Jensen now goes into the tank for quite a while, but eventually folds his pair of 7s. Nice fold from him, and aces hold up despite the questionable pre-flop play. Now this next hand I should explain a little something first. We're playing the bounty game, which means if you win 3 pots in a row, everyone at the table owes you $1,000. That means in this case, since it's 9-handed, I believe, I stand to win $8 grand in this particular hand because I've won the last 2. And now I've got 5 deuce offsuit, which of course is not great, but if we can get it done one way or another, there's a lot of money up for grabs. So I decide to make it $1,500 pre-flop. Henry makes the call, as does Mike Nia, along with Dylan. So 4 of us go into a flop of Jack 6-3 with 2 hearts. Checks to me, and I continue for $3,500. I've got a straight draw, but more importantly, I think it's a board that, unless someone flopped a set on, it's going to be tough to hang on for multiple streets of pressure. Granted, if the board dynamic does change, like say another heart comes, maybe a card like another Jack or a 7 or whatever, you know, something that connects the board in a scary way, I'm going to tread cautiously, but for now, I like pressing the pedal to the metal and seeing what happens. Henry makes the call, which immediately I am displeased with, not just because, of course, we're getting called, but he's making the call with 2 other players left to act behind him, which should generally be stronger than if he were to close the action. Mike Nia's out of there, Dylan also out of there. Off to a turn, which is a 6 of spades, an absolute blank for the most part. I don't think Henry's calling the flop with a 6 too often. This time I check it though, because in theory, I think this card is slightly better for him, and it's also a cool spot to check raise some strong holdings. So I think maybe check raising with 5 high and a straight draw wouldn't be the worst thing here. I check it, and now Henry bets $6,200. Back around to me, and of course I am not loving this situation, but I know Henry is prone to betting maybe hands that I feel he shouldn't necessarily. And of course you're probably thinking to yourself, what's the big deal? He's got top pair and he's betting, right? It's not rocket science. Well, yeah, I couldn't really argue that, but in my opinion, betting in spots where you're almost never getting called by worse and could put yourself in precarious spots against a check raise, in my opinion, is not the best way to go about things, especially against a guy like me who might be trying to dice you up with like an overpair or ace jack or something. But anyway, Henry bets $6,200. He doesn't care about any of that. He's probably got the best hand in his mind, and he's definitely right. However, it's back around to me now, and I think this is a cool spot to go for it, mainly for two reasons. I don't have a heart. You know, there's the aforementioned $8,000 that I could win if he folds. And also, I think he could be betting weak jacks and flush draws, like whatever, a 9-high flush draw or a random straight draw like 5-4 suited. You know, hands like that, which of course we are not beating, and it would be awesome to get a fold against those. I doubt he's going to call off his entire stack with a flush draw or even a hand like Jack 8 suited, for example. So I decide to go for it. Maximum pressure here with 5 deuce offsuit. Don't try this at home. But man, it's going to be pretty cool if it works, right guys? I get to show 5 high and everyone pays me $1,000. Sometimes you got to just go for it. For the memes, as they say. Henry is having none of the memes. He thinks for like 5 seconds and calls. The disrespect, man. He's got Jack 10 offsuit and doesn't even think about me having a better hand. But I guess that's what happens when you try to bluff a guy who's been on a downswing for like 6 months. He's had enough. He's not going to full top pair. So now we need to make a 4 on the river to improve to a straight, which does not come. It's the queen of diamonds, and just like that, I end up punting somewhere in the neighborhood of like $35,000 trying to win my third button, which of course was uncalled for, but that's the beauty of this 3 in a row game, is people really go for it for that third button, and I was no exception here. In the next one, I raise it up to $600 over a limper with 8-5 suited. Just too wide, honestly. Looking back, yeah, Jensen's been playing tight and I have direct position, but we could just get punished from players behind. And that's actually what happens here, is Bulldog puts in a 3-bet to 2,000 on my left. Gets back around to me, and I decide to make the call with 8-5 suited out of position. This is just poor. Perhaps a little bit of tilt creeping in from the session not going super well so far, but here we go, off to a flop, which comes down ace-9-6 with 1 club. Overall, it's a pretty sweet board because I could have ace-9, I could have pocket 9s, pocket 6s, 7-8 suited, all sorts of different ways I might be interacting with this kind of board texture. So my immediate thought is, if he bets small, which I think would be a mistake, I'm going to pounce on this with a check raise. That's exactly what happens. He puts in 1,300 and I raise it up to 5,300. Let's start applying some pressure to top pair if that's what he's got. Bulldog makes the call, which I'm completely fine with. My plan is to just continue betting if the turn is good. And by good, I mean a card that gives me equity or a flush draw or, you know, something. Oh my gosh, it's everything. It's the 7 of clubs. Yeah, we check raise the flop with a gutter and immediately get there, plus the flush draw just in case, you know. This card's almost too good because now I don't know what to do. And as you guys can tell here, or maybe not, I'm not entirely sure if the coverage captured this, but Bulldog was shuffling some red chips in his hand. I don't think this was malicious at all, but what happened here is I took a look at his stack and didn't see those red chips, so I thought he had like, I don't know, $12,000 behind. I decided to just jam all in since that's around pot, but then he puts down these red chips and I realized that I bet like double pot by accident. Probably my fault because, you know, it's my responsibility as the aggressor in the hand to make sure and count my opponent's chip stacks in these spots, so by no means am I blaming Bulldog, just telling you guys what happened. But I don't think that's the worst thing ever because, let's face it, if I was bluffing, we would want maximum pressure anyway, right? And maybe this just looks even more suspicious to Bulldog. I'm expecting to get called by top pair, but unfortunately, Bulldog does not have top pair. He's just got middle pair with a straight draw, and in the end, he does decide to let it go, which is a nice fold from him. I think it's a pretty straightforward one, but apparently he just did not believe me because it took quite a while. Either way, we take this one down, but the downside is we don't get maximum value in a spot where I feel like I really could have gotten away with extracting some more chips, but whatever, live and learn. All right, this next hand, guys, you're just going to have to excuse me. I apologize in advance. but I've got 10-5 offsuit on the button. Whatever, sue me. If you hate it, click off the video. We've got 10-5 off. Brown baller raises to 500. Dylan re-raises him on his left, and I'm coming after Dylan. I 4-bet to $5,700. It goes without saying that this is incredibly bad. Do not do this ever. But the reason I'm doing it is because I have a lot of history with Dylan. I love to give this guy action, even if it's with absolute napkins like 10-5 off. And if I end up losing, that's fine because it's Dylan. And if I don't end up losing and we cook him with 10-5 off, that's pretty funny. Once again, for the memes. Dylan makes the call. We're pretty deep stacked here and I've got position. And honestly, even though my cards suck, those are two very powerful factors to have going in my favor. Many chips behind, we've got position, let's see what happens. Flop comes down Jack, Jack, 6. We both absolutely miss. But when Dylan checks and I bet small, he decides Ace King is worth at least one more call. So he comes along and we see the Queen of Clubs on the turn. Interesting card because obviously, you know, I have nothing to do with this board, but I'm just thinking, what does Dylan have? And after he calls the flop, I think we're sometimes going to be running into Ace Queen. But there's only one way to find out. I think a bet here is completely fine and then just give up on the river. Because even though he might have something good, he could still have hands like Ace 10 suited, Ace 5 suited, Ace King, of course. And all those hands are going to hate this spot, especially knowing there might be a river bet coming as well. So when Dylan checks, I think for a bit and wonder, how much would I bet if I had a good hand here? And I think the answer is around half pot, so that's what I do with 10-5 off. I throw in 10,000 bucks, and now Dylan, as you guys can tell, is in a miserable situation. He's got a sick haircut, he's got a clean shave, but that's not enough. He lets go of Ace King of Clubs, and we get it through. Unfortunately for him, we have to show it because we're playing that bounty game, and you have to show every hand, so sorry, brother. 10-5 off gets it done this time versus Ace King of Clubs. It might look kind of funny, but again, do not do this. Your mileage may vary. Anyway, that brings us to this next hand, which is the last fun one from stream number 2, where once again, I've got 2 buttons, guys. That means there's $8,000 up for grabs once more. And of course, I am going to go for it. This time I've got much better than 5 deuce off. It's 10-4 suited. I mean, yeah, it's kind of trash. It's 10-4, but you know, suited. So anyway, Dylan makes it 500. I re-raise to 3,000. Everyone behind me folds until it gets to Dr. P, who decides to cold call this $3,000 with Ace 5 suited. A bit treacherous from the doctor, but maybe he's trying to give me some medicine. Here we go. Dylan makes the call as well, and we go to a flop, which is chef's kiss for 10-4 of diamonds. It comes Ace Queen Deuce with 2 diamonds. Obviously, we've got the flush draw, which is the best part of this. But I was the last aggressor pre-flop, and last time I checked, Ace Queen Deuce is usually best for the last pre-flop aggressor. I could have aces, I could have queens, I could have Ace Deuce suited, Ace Queen, Ace King. You guys get the idea, whereas my opponents aren't really going to be super strong on this flop too often, so that's all the excuse I need. It checks to me, I put in 3K. Dr. P makes the call, which I am definitely not loving. Dylan calls as well, which might actually be advantageous as we go to a turn, which doesn't help. It's the 6 of hearts, but what I mean by that is if I continue to bet after both of these guys check, I think it'll look stronger than if I were to bet against just one player who had called the flop. Reason being is Dr. P is now going to recognize that I'm continuing to bet after getting called by both he and Dylan on the flop. That's got to be a good hand, right? Flush draw minimum. Am I right, Doctor? Well, I don't know if he agrees because I bet $10,000 and after about a minute or two, he sticks around once again. Dylan gets out of the way and so we're off to a river card, which is the 7 of clubs. Dr. P checks once more. And even though this isn't a great spot to bluff, I look at how big the pot is. It's 38K. He's only got 17 behind. And of course, there's 8K additional for me to win. So that means if I can get him to fold for $17,000, I win $46,000. According to my math, that simply translates to this bluff doesn't have to work that often to be profitable. Even if it works 50% of the time, we're absolutely printing money. So let's see if that happens. I shove all in, and Dr. P is in a miserable spot. I think he's probably got a queen based on his reaction, but after some time, he actually announces that he has an ace. At this point, I realize it's probably not going to work, even though he hates his spot because, of course, I could have a better ace. I think he just has to call given that he only has, like, you know, a third pot behind or whatever it was. So he sure enough does call, and we lose this pot as well. $68,000 in the middle are getting pushed to Dr. P. Nice hand from him, and unfortunately for me, not only do we lose another big pot, but we miss out on the chance at the 3 buttons. Definitely not the most fun I've ever had playing poker, but don't worry, there's one more stream. Let's move along to day 3. In this one, we are starting off with pocket 8s in a weird spot where Mike X opens to 300, Kristen Foxen re-raises in position to 1100, and then Dylan jams for 10K. I mean, this is weird. Sure, he could have a better pair than my pocket 8s, but it's only 10K, and I feel like we're going to have the best hand more often than not. So I decide to gamble with my middling pair. I toss in the call. Back to Mike X, who folds. Kristen also folds, and just like that, we are off to the races versus Dylan, who's got ace-5 offsuit, so he was trying to get away with a bluff pre-flop. Unfortunately for him, he runs into a pretty good hand from me, and we end up holding on king 7-4, queen 6. Looks a little dicey with 4 hearts out there and, you know, a couple overcards, but pocket 8s get it done, and we start this session off with a small win. Next, this hand comes up where I've got ace-10 offsuit. We're playing 25, 50, 100, so I open it up to 300 and get no less than 5 callers. 6 ways to a flop, which is, whoa. That's the nuts. King, queen, jack, rainbow. We flop Broadway on a dry board, and hopefully one that other people have connected with as well. And sure enough, Kristen has connected. She flopped the second nuts with 10-9 offsuit after defending her big blind. And it looks like it might cost her. It gets to me, I bet $600. I've got a strong hand, and I want to get some value. Not very advanced. Wolfgang makes the call. Audie makes the call. And now, music to my ears as Kristen announces a check raise to $2,700. I think re-raising here wouldn't make too much sense, although I don't hate the idea from time to time. But when it gets to me, I keep it standard and just call. Wolfgang and Audie sense trouble and they get out of the way, so it's just the two of us going to a turn, which I absolutely hate. It's the king of hearts. Obviously, my hand now loses to a full house, and what could she be check raising the flop with, assuming she's not bluffing? Well, that's mostly 2 pair, hands like king queen and king jack. That said, she now slows down and checks, which has me feeling like she likely either has the same hand as me or 10-9, which of course is a smaller straight. Against both of those holdings, I'm completely okay with continuing to bet. If she calls with a worse straight, that's great. If she folds the same straight I have somehow, that's fine too. Weird spot now, but I decide to bet. I put in $4,200 around half pot. Kristen thinks for a bit and calls, and we go to a river, which is a complete blank. It's the deuce of spades. Kristen checks a third time, and now it's a question of checking back and playing it safe or going for some more value. And even though maybe a few years ago I might have just checked back in fear of a full house, I think at this point I'm okay with living by the sword and dying by the sword. I'd rather lose to a full house here after betting than checking back and missing out on some potential value. So I think about it for a bit and decide on a bet of $7,500. Don't want to go too big and allow her the opportunity to fold 10-9 if that's what she's got. And immediately I can tell she probably doesn't have a boat based on her body language. She just doesn't seem too happy. And at that point, I start rooting for a call. Sure enough, that's what we get. About 2 minutes after some thought, Kristen tosses in the call. Who can blame her? She flopped a really strong hand. Pretty much a cooler here, which I guess technically could have been worse if the board didn't pair. So that's some silver lining for her. But we do win this pot, 31,000 headed our direction. Moving right along to this beautiful hand, Wesley opens up the action to 300. There's 4 callers, and then I look down at aces in the big blind. That's right, pocket aces for the second time in tonight's vlog. I'm going to come in for the re-raise. I make it $2,800 to go. And then it just gets even better, guys. Wesley puts in another raise to 7,400 with his pocket 10s. Can't say I love this because I'm re-raising his initial open, which came from early position, so probably I'm not going to be messing around too often, and now he's bloating the pot with a middling pair. This doesn't really play super well deep stacked, but whatever, let's not get too nerdy. The man has made it $7,400. It gets back around to me with aces, and considering how deep we are, I don't want to mess around too much here. I'm just going to put in another raise. I make it $19,800. pretty much 20k, and after a little bit of deliberation, Wesley makes the call. So we're out of position, but we have bloated the pot all the way up to 40k pre-flop. I'll take that as a dub since I've got aces. Off to a board of queen 9-3 2 clubs. Not the best flop ever. We are losing to queens and pocket nines, but all things considered, I'm more than okay with it. I'm going to continue betting. I've got the ace of clubs as well. You know, one of those like in case of emergency break glass type of things. But anyway, I'm going to bet. And also in the past, I might have bet really small here, but it turns out half pot is actually completely fine in 4 and 5 bet pots. So that's what I'm going with here, 20k into 40. Wesley now thinks for quite a long time and makes a really nice fold. A little bit tight, honestly. I might have floated with pocket tens in his shoes, still beating, you know, small suited aces, ace king, the obvious stuff. But Wesley does not stick around. He just lets go of his tens, and I don't really blame him, honestly. It would have sucked to face another big bet on the turn with his hand, so perhaps fearing what's to come, he just gets out of the way and saves some money. I flip over the pocket aces, and we win this one as well. Not a ton of post-flop action, but still pretty cool because we collect 21,000 in profit. In this next one, there's a raise from Audie to 300. Mike X calls, Kenji calls, and then Red Fish makes it 1,800 on the button. I've got pocket queens in the big blind, guys. That's right, pocket aces, now pocket queens. I'm playing extra good today, as you can tell. I make it $6,000 to go. Now Audie cold calls the 6k, which is adventurous, let's say. Kenji also cold calls the 6k, which is, at that point, just hilarious. And then Redfish, the 3-better, he gets out of the way. I can admit with 100% honesty that that is the last thing I expected to happen. Two of the guys who have only put in 300 have now tossed in 6,000, and then the guy who made it 1,800 gets out of the way. Hilarious. Anyway, off to a flop, which comes down ace 7-6 with 2 hearts. Not the best flop, obviously, since I've got queens and there's an ace out there. So I decide to check. I think a small bet here is probably okay heads up, but 3-ways, not really loving it. Audie checks as well, but Kenji does not. He tosses in $10,000. And I'm already thinking to myself, queens with a heart, I'll probably just get out of the way. If I didn't have a heart, I might consider sticking around, but having some removal to potential bluffs from Kenji, I just don't really want to mess around too much with this one, so I'm gone. Audie also folds, and then Kenji promptly shows pocket 5s. A very disrespectful bet from him, but man, he gets the job done beautifully as he gets a fold from 2 better hands. And it just highlights the power of position in this damn game. Nice hand, Kenji. Queens don't get it done this time. Or I guess they did get it done, but I didn't get it done. Alas, we move to the last hand of this stream and the last hand of this entire vlog. This one's also pretty weird. Wolfgang limps in from early position as he does. Redfish also limps in from the small blind. Dylan limps in as well from the big blind. And then I look down at ace queen in the straddle. A beautiful hand, a very strong hand at least. So I'm just going to raise it. I've got position against 2 of the limpers, and Wolfgang on my left is probably not going to get too out of line. Sure enough, he folds his 8-7 suited in position. Back to Redfish now, who I expect to call. The man is not afraid of action. But then he does not call. Instead, he puts in the old limp re-raise. And not just a limp re-raise like, you know, your normal standard limp re-raise, but you got to remember, Wolfgang has already limped in. So this is the over limp and then back raise play. Not something you see too often, but anyways, he's made it $5,500. Dylan's out of there. And I think I know exactly what's going on here, which is that I've been raising a lot pre-flop and Redfish has just had enough. He's probably taking a stand or making some sort of creative play. So with ace-queen offsuit, a pretty strong hand, and having removal to the real stuff like aces, queens, and ace-king, I decide to put in another raise. Calling completely fine, I guess, but I think I like a raise a little bit more. We have position and the initiative, so I'm in there. I make it 13,000 to go. Redfish now thinks for a bit and jams for 38k. At this point, I don't think he's messing around too much, but we beat a lot of ace highs like ace jack or ace 10 suited, and we're flipping against pocket pairs that, of course, are below the queen. So we're getting a pretty decent price since I've already put in 13k. This is a no-brainer call. So Redfish and I are all in for 44k a piece. That means there's 88,000 in change in the middle, and Redfish asks to run it as many times as I want, he says. Well, when that's the case, I usually like to go once, unless my opponents want to go twice, but if the choice is given to me, then it's going to be one time more often than not. So that's what's going on here. An $88,000 coin flip, if you will. As you guys can see, I'm actually quite a heavy favorite, 59% versus 41%, and that's simply because Hustler's software with the cards, it accounts for all the folded cards from the other players, so I guess no aces and queens have been folded. But anyway, we're off to the races, and it's not much of a sweat. There's a queen right on the flop. Turn card is the 8 of clubs, which looks a little scary at first, but that's not a 9. River is the 4 of hearts. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how I ran pretty hot in this hand and profited $44,275 to close off this night. A very, very nice way to end this session. As always, I hope you all enjoyed the hands and stay tuned for some more thoughts. So I know that was quite a bit of poker, but I'm going to trust that you guys don't mind and you're okay with a bunch of hands. Let's talk results. So I played 3 sessions. The first one went well. I won around 45 or 50. The second one was an absolute disaster. I ran bad, I played bad, and everything in between. But the third one went well. It was a great recovery after what was a disastrous second day. When it was all said and done, I ended up winning across all 3 sessions a grand total of $15,000 and some change, which is great. I mean, considering how bad I played that second day, I'll take it. You know, it's something that could have turned into a huge downswing, but luckily on that third day I was able to keep my nerves about me, run a little better, and recover quite nicely. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and please stay tuned for the next one, because I am so excited for the next vlog. I'm not going to spoil what it was or what happened, but I think it's going to be one of my favorite videos. So if you haven't already subscribed, stay tuned. And as always, I'll see you guys next time. Good luck at your local tables. Peace.